My name is J.D. Smith. I'm with the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, and I serve on the steering committee for London Swine Conference. And I'm happy to be able to moderate this final session. I think over the last day and a half we have covered a remarkable range of topics important to our industry, and I think it's very fitting that we round it out with this afternoon's session where we're going to talk about consumer and retail and the processing sector. We're going to start with I have to do a job. I have to thank all of our premier sponsors, Better Pork, Farm Credit Canada, Total Swine Genetics, Zentig Direct, and SwineWeb.com for sponsoring the coffee break. I especially appreciate that. And I'd like to thank all of the conference sponsors for the generous support of London Swine Conference, because we could not do it without them. I would like to now introduce John F.T. Scott. John is an economist, consultant, and speaker specializing in the food distribution and retail sector. He currently analyzes strategies and frequently writes and speaks on Canada's food industry to various groups and companies. He's renowned for weaving the preferences of the evolving consumer into the evolving dynamics of the industry. John is chair of the board of directors of the Canadian Agri-Food Policy Institute and chair of the board of governors of Niagara College. He's past chair of the acclaimed Vineland Research and Innovation Centre and a former director of the Alberta Livestock and Meat Agency. He currently serves on the board of Platform Genetics Incorporated. John is one of only 3 individuals who have received both of the highest recognitions in Canada's retail food industry: the Golden Pencil, Hall of Fame, and the Spirit of Independent Award, an inspiration to entrepreneurs in the sector. John's topic is the consumer sets a quick pace for grocery retail. Please help me welcome John to the stage.
Thanks, JD. Good afternoon, everyone. You know, you're all going to go home in about an hour and a half or so, and I hope when you do that, you're going to go past some grocery stores, and hopefully after I've finished my short little talk this afternoon, you might look at them just slightly differently than you have in the past. Now, you may have noticed in the last little while that we've had some amazing new stories that have emerged in the media about grocery retail. And one of the things about the media is they always glom on to grocery retail because everybody has to eat. So they think everybody's interested in food. One of the biggest announcements that we had last year was the acquisition of Whole Foods by Amazon. And if you notice that even here in Canada, where Whole Foods has a very, very small market share, there was this great outpouring of concern by the media of what would happen to Canada's grocery industry. And then you saw Metro, the 3rd largest grocer in Canada, acquire Jean Coutu, the large pharmacist in Quebec. And once again, why do they do that? They do that as another outlet for food, particularly emphasis on health and wellness. And then recently, to exacerbate the situation, you would have seen Loblaws announced, since their acquisition of Shoppers Drug Mart, to actually take some of the Shopper stores and go into what they call a well-wise concept. In other words, these stores that are strategically located, particularly in retirement communities, would be heavily oriented towards providing food and other commodities designed for the wellness of the individual. So what's this all about? Well, everybody's trying to get a certain amount of market share. There's so much competition out there that everybody has to get a certain angle. You know, you sit back and you say most of the discussion right now in the media, because it's sexy, is about what's going to happen through e-commerce or internet shopping. You must see it. Everybody sees it, right? You see Amazon and what they're going to do. Oh, they're coming to Canada. The sky is falling. You see Walmart come forward with something where you can actually scan your items in the aisle and just walk out of the store. You see Loblaws come up with Instacart, which is a premium delivery service which will deliver your product in urban areas within an hour. And then you have the new concept put forward by Amazon, where you basically walk in the store, you do the shop, and you walk out. And 2 of those stores now exist in the United States. Very different ways of dealing with the consumer. A long, long way of where my mom used to get everything, right? You used to be able to get everything. It was so simple. to go to the grocery store wherever it was. Well, take a look at what we got now. And these are just a few of the stores in Ontario, but I want you to look at them from a different point of view and realize that you go to each one of those stores for an entirely different reason. And you're in most of those stores, most consumers are in most of those stores at least once every month. Certain things get into your mind as to what you prefer in the marketplace. Oh, I'll get my canned goods and I'll get my packaged goods at Walmart or Costco, but I'm going to get my produce at Farm Boy, or I'm going to get my prepared foods, I'm going to go to Sunkist. You see, everybody does something a little bit different to attract a discerning consumer who is offering a $110 billion market in this country. Now, if you boil it all down, you take some of those banners, you boil it all down, you have 5 companies that control 78% of grocery distribution in this country. And if I add 2 more, which are primarily in Western Canada, I get to 90% grocery distribution in Canada. You say, well, how can that be, John? How can that be? Well, it's simple. We're the only country in the world that allows grocery retailers, grocery distribution, to distribute, to operate corporate stores, franchise, and wholesale in exactly the same market area. In essence, you're competing against yourself. And of course, they come out with all different banners, designed to entice you in different ways. Let me give you an example of Loblaws. Here are just a few of the banners that Loblaws is using here in Ontario. And here's an example of Sobeys, a few of their banners that exist here in Ontario. The Safeway, by the way, is in Thunder Bay. So if you take all of that, that's who really controls the grocery market. You have 90% of your groceries in Canada going through those channels. So who's growing? Who's really winning in the market? Well, I'm going to tell you who's going to win and who's winning right now, despite the fact that I just told you it's controlled by 7 companies. These are the companies that are winning. What's winning big time is discount. The Walmarts and the No Frills and the Food Basics of the world are winning. And for the first time on a national basis last year, we went to 53% of groceries sold in Canada through the discount channel. Costco has the fastest rate of growth of groceries in the country. And online shopping is growing, but not as rapidly as the media would have you believe. It still represents around 1% of Canadian shopping and probably won't represent much more than 4% in the next 7 or 8 years. It's just a different country, much more diverse, as you know, much more dispersed. Well, who's setting the trend and who's doing all of the shopping that makes the growth work, or some of the other companies basically stay static? Well, it's you, isn't it? It's you. You, the consumer. Well, the consumer has to do something very important in order to make you grow or to keep you static in the marketplace. And the company that caught on to it was Walmart. In 2016, in November at the annual meeting, CEO Doug McMillan stood up and said, in the future, the new era of competition will be on trust and transparency with the consumer. Trust and transparency. And when he made that statement, he did not talk about sales or margins or products. He talked about trust and transparency with the consumer. And this year, the Longo chain in Toronto adopted a similar platform, moving into family values. And as we look across the spectrum, those retailers that are growing, regardless of where you sit, as a discounter, traditional retailer, or a high-end retailer, the issues of trust and transparency are becoming paramount. And you need to look no further than the recent issue around bread price fixing that was announced by the Loblaw companies the week before Christmas this year and implicated all of the majors in this country. We don't know where this is going to go, but I will tell you this. Those principally targeted have all seen a decline in sales since that time. And you saw Loblaw's results were just announced recently, and you can see, despite the brave face and the increase in overall sales, the per-store sales have declined, as they have with Sobeys, as they have with Metro. All implicated, the person getting the most abuse, of course, is Loblaws, for several reasons. Issue they have is trust and transparency with the consumer, and they'll be scrambling to get it back. So who is the consumer? Let me just give you a bit of an idea of what these retailers are dealing with and how they can work to take advantage of your trust for providing transparency in terms of what you want as a consumer. Well, the first thing we've got is we got a baby boomer, right? Baby boomers. Everybody talks about the baby boomers. Well, the oldest baby boomer this year is 73, right? 73? And what happens when you get older, the youngest is in their late 50s. What happens when you get older is you don't eat as much. You really don't. So you have smaller portions, right? So you don't consume as much. Oh, you might have the money, and you might want to buy more high-end goods, but you don't eat as much, so smaller portions. You want to be a little bit healthier. You want to kind of stay around a little bit longer. So you're kind of working on that a little bit, right? And now you're having grandchildren. Oh, you're having grandchildren. And boy, I'll tell you, those grandchildren are going to be treated in a way like you never treated your own children. You might have dropped them off at McDonald's or thrown a pizza at them on your way to play golf or tennis. Those grandchildren come into focus. Grandma's got you out there at the store buying the best free-range turkey that money can buy. Believe me, she's doing it this afternoon. I'm going to see my grandchildren tonight. That's what's happening. So we've seen a trend with the baby boom with their financial resources. Higher quality product, smaller portions. More frequently going into stores, because stores are becoming their social life, they're part of their community. Looking after their grandchildren and wanting to stay longer on the planet, which means more healthy foods. And you can see that in so many stores in retirement communities. In those smaller communities, you can see the upscale offering that is there. Let me give you an example. I live in Niagara-on-the-Lake, a lot of retirees in Niagara-on-the-Lake. If I go into the Shoppers Drug Mart owned by Loblaws there, the food that I pick up there is significantly different from the food that I can pick up at my daughter-in-law's place in Toronto. Food in Niagara-on-the-Lake at the Shoppers Drug Mart is very heavily oriented towards the senior population in a healthier vein. Second group, of course, is the millennials. Everybody talks about the millennials. They grew up with the technology. They know how to use technology. They expect change in technology. They're extremely well educated. The thing that's given our industry and the restaurant industry fits is the individuality demanded by these people. And that individuality is personified by the Starbucks of the world. Just go downstairs here and grab a Starbucks and try to decipher something that somebody's saying ahead of you in line. I defy most of you to be able to do that. And they're going to pay $5 for a latte, but they won't spend that kind of money on a meal for their family. Individuality. And it's given companies like McDonald's fits. And believe me, when it comes to retail, it's become even more difficult. Well, what's happening with these people is they're having children. And they're having children, and they're looking at their children, and they've got a work-life family balance that's very refreshing. They're reading labels. They want to know what's in the food. They want to know what's in the food. They want to know what they're feeding their children to a greater extent than the previous generation ever did. And they'll challenge you at grocery, and they'll demand a certain level of service and satisfaction from the food product that's being supplied. No, they won't go over the 9% of income spent on groceries that has become tradition in Canada. They won't do that. And they won't give up their latte at Starbucks. But they'll balance it off by going to those discount outlets and buying their packaged goods there and their higher end goods at companies like that offer the very best and fresh product. They're balancing and proving to be better grocery shoppers than we've ever seen before. And this laughable notion that this generation doesn't know how to cook, you can throw that out too. You can throw it out too. There's a combination there. Let me give you an example. My daughter-in-law just had our most recent grandchild, who's 4 months old right now. And she had a hard time boiling water before. Well, she does pretty well now, does okay. But my son, who got married last summer to a lovely young lady, who still calls me Mr. Scott, and that's a good thing, she and my son said to my daughter-in-law, what can we bring to your family in recognition of your new grandchild? And they said, we would love some of the food that you two make. They're two little gourmet chefs. That's what they figured out. They're phenomenal cooks. So they went off and made their food product and brought it to that family, and that was their gift for the baby. So there's a whole group of the millennials that's shopping in a way that we've never seen before. And they're shopping healthier, and they're shopping in a more concerted style. So here's an interesting statistic, if you don't believe it. The combination of the baby boom not consuming as much and the millennial consuming more fresh product has resulted in packaged goods volume, tonnage not increasing since 2012. Same tonnage since 2012. And then, of course, we have invited folks from all over the world to come and join us in Canada. And it's been a phenomenally successful program. And when people come from around the world, as they always have, they bring their food. The Italians brought their pizza, the Japanese brought their sushi, and we're getting Thai food, we're getting stuff from all over the world, and it's integrated in our diet quickly, and it isn't just sold in particular stores, it's now being integrated in mainstream grocery, and we're all consuming it all the time. It's a whole new paradigm. So you combine that with all of those consumers collectively have expectations. And what do they expect of you, the supermarket? Well, first of all, it's this. It's the technology, and you're going to say, yeah, John, and I'm not going to talk about technology a lot, but I'm just going to say this. The consumer expects, particularly the millennial consumer and the with it baby boomer, that they can trace a food product back to its source. That they can take their tablets or their phones in the store and figure out what's in the food, where it's from, and who's behind it. And if they find a new product that they're interested in, they do it. And if you, the retailer, haven't invested in your people to be able to provide them with that type of information, they'll find it out. And it may not be what you want to be found out. They'll find it out. And you're finding it, they'll go from the retailer through the distribution company, through the processor, down to the farm level. And it's played out time and time again. Secondly is the 9%. 9% hasn't changed. And nobody's going to change it. Consumer has such a deal on food in this country, it isn't even funny, but they expect it. It seems to be maintained, particularly as we have a good economy. It's extremely difficult. We have 88% urbanization in Canada, and the consumer expects food provided in their little 600 square foot apartment on the 33rd floor in Queens Quay in downtown Toronto at the same price you're buying at Zara supermarket here in London. Same price. Consumer expects the retailer to always be on their side, always be on their side. And the retailer is always on their side for a reason. They have to embrace what the consumer wants. And the expectation is that the food is safe. Always that the food is safe. I just came back 2 days ago from some time in Africa. I was explaining it. My wife and I did a trip of a lifetime. I spent a little bit of time in the slums of Nairobi. And the expectation is that the food is not safe. Food is not safe. Nothing that isn't in a bag or a bottle from certain countries. You think of how lucky we are. I think with the CFIA and our science-based system, we have safe food. That's an expectation of our consumer. What a consumer really wants to know, though, what's in the food product. Do you really think we're providing them with that information with this? If I see that, or I'm a millennial looking at that, what am I going to do? I'm going to look at my tablet, and I'm going to find out the true facts behind that product, aren't I? And then we have the simplicity proposed by Health Canada, which is probably going a little bit too far the other way. What's in the food? You have so many people, and you know this in your own industry, you have so many people with so many different slants on what they will or can't eat in society. There are those people who believe in organic and believe organic is the only way to go. There's people that believe in natural, the only way to go. There's people that have to be gluten-free or celiac or have a sensitive system. I'll give you a quick little story on that. My wife's celiac. And for a long time, the stuff that she would consume before it became in vogue, gluten-free product, basically tasted like cardboard. Or it doesn't anymore. Pretty good product. In some ways, it's even preferable to some of the other stuff that's available. Now, for the retailer, that's a pretty good deal because gluten-free may be, second to plastic bags, the highest margin item in the store. Now understand, and then there's the GMOs and all of the other things. Understand, you say, why does a retailer stock all of those products? It's simple. They all have components of their consumer population that require it. And they will put the proper product in place to accommodate the needs of those consumers. It's no longer what my mom had, one size fits all. It's all of these particular products. And I know you're dealing with this. And if you're not dealing with it, you're looking at it. You have companies like Maple Leaf, companies like Loblaw is actually investing in this now, saying, how is this going to work in the future? Where does the protein, the animal versus the vegetable proteins saw off? And there's a lot of research being done on that, and I can't tell you where it's going to go, except to tell you this, it's going to continue. There's going to continue to be pressure there. To tell you today at retail, here are the basic facts. Organic always trumps natural. Natural is growing the fastest over conventional product, always. You get a little bit less volume on organic, a little bit less volume on natural than conventional, but you get higher margins. So there's always a trade-off, and you know those things. But remember, organic trumps natural, natural trumps conventional, natural's growing fastest. Second thing they want to know is where and how the food was produced. Well, simple. We have taught the consumer that traceability is a fact. The consumer believes traceability is a fact more in the meat industry than anything else. We've had our issues with our XL meats, and we've had our issues with Maple Leaf, and we've shown the consumer that we can go right back to that level. Traceability is an expectation, and they believe it's there. Same as local produced is better. Finally, the issue around sustainability. The consumer believes that you're producing sustainable products. And I urge primary producer groups, whether into sustainability or not, to embark on a program, whatever sustainability means in your particular industry, is an expectation of consumers. And the third thing consumers want to know is who's behind the food. And it's not enough to say, Here we have these great primary producers, the most trusted component of the food chain, these great primary producers. We also have trusted processors, and we have trusted retailers. Those are the people behind the food, and the consumer has to have trust in that. So you say, what's in the food? Where does the food come from? Who's behind the food? It comes up to one thing, and that's trust. Take a look at this ad by McDonald's. Take a look. What's in the food? It's pretty hard not to say, I don't know where this thing is. Okay. Pretty hard not to see. They're saying what's in the food is that 100% Canadian beef. Where is it from? Take a look at the farm down below there. And who's behind it? Take a look. And take a look at the ads. I don't mean the weekly ad and the flyers that you get talking about the pricing. I'm talking about the feel-good ads that all major retailers put out there. And you will see that regularly. They're putting out three things. What's in the food? Where's it from? And who's behind it? It doesn't matter whether it's Galen Weston talking or McDonald's. That's what they come up with, because that's what the consumer wants to know. So here's where we are with food today. And this clicker doesn't work so well, so I can't really show you. But we have this type of thing. You've got the premium stores at the top, you've got traditional stores in the middle, and you got this discount chain, discount movement going fast down at the bottom, right? Just remember, fastest growth is discount. The highest margin, greatest profitability, and most difficult to produce is premium. And most retailers are still in traditional, and that's where the fight's going on in the middle. On the side, you have cultural stores, like ethnic stores we were talking about before, online, and what we call adventure discount. Adventure discount is the Costco of the world. It's kind of like, when you were a kid and Uncle Fred had a peppermint in his pocket, right? And sometimes he had the peppermint in his pocket, and sometimes maybe he didn't. So what you did was you went to see Uncle Fred when you first saw him and said, "Gee, Uncle Fred, you got a peppermint today," and he would get it. Well, did you leave that peppermint? No, you took the peppermint, didn't you? Because it might not be there the next time. That's the secret to Costco. You take the peppermint because it's not always there. Kind of neat. Adventure discount. Here's how it plays out. That's kind of here in London. You'll see Farm Boy, Sunkist, the top. I put Longos in there for those who are familiar with Longos. But you know that the Sobeys, the Metro, the Loblaws are fighting it out in that traditional sector. It's not they don't do business, but they're fighting it out in that traditional sector. And you can see that everybody's into the discount markets. And so that's kind of how the grocery business sits right now. You've got discount on a roll, you've got traditional really struggling, really fighting it out, and you've got premium, and we've got some great premium stores. If I am a Farm Boy or I'm a Sunkist and I'm really into premium, you know where I want to be located? Right next to Walmart or Costco. I want to be there because I offer something so different that's complementary to what they're buying. That's where I want to be. And you watch. You take a look even here in London, you'll see that. You'll see that. Okay? But if I'm a traditional retailer, the place I don't want to be is across the street from Costco, because they'll kill me every time. Across the street from traditional retailer, across the street from Costco. So, if I want to list a product, here's a traditional listing. Quality, quantity, distribution, right? Right? Got to have good quality product, quantity, distribution. Then I got to have something called a marketing plan. I need to be priced competitively, and in this market, I need a bag full of money. A bag full of money to tell the retailer it'd be swell if you put my product on your shelf, and an even bigger bag if you wanted at a certain level, like an eye level or something like that, right? By the way, the big bag of money, if you're a Me Too product trying to get in the market, when I say a Me Too product, just another packaged good, they already have packaged goods from such and such a company, you want to get in there, that better be a pretty big bag of money. And it can end up being, get this, between 28 and 29%. of the cost of the product from supplier to retailer. It can be that high for a Me Too product. It can be lower if you have a unique product. It can be not at all if you're offering exclusivity on a brand new product. But here's what's changed. This is what I've been talking about. And I hope you can see this slide. A retailer is carrying between 13,000 and 30,000 products in their store. They can't possibly tell the consumer everything about all those products, no matter how much they educate their staff. And so what they do is they rely on you, the processor, or the retailer, or the primary producer, to be able to back them up on this information. So they need to know the ethics under which your product is produced. They want to know that now. And they want to know the provenance, where it was produced, where it came from. They want to know about sustainability issues. And they sure as heck want to know about any health claims you're making. These are the elements of trust that I talked about before. And so before today you can list a new product, you're going to have to convince a retailer not just about your quality and your quantity and your distribution, not just about your marketing plan, your pricing structure, or your support money. You're also going to have to talk about your provenance, your ethics, your sustainability, and your health, because if something goes wrong with that product, you're the one that's going to have to speak to it. And we've all seen these exposés on W5 and 60 Minutes and everything else like that, and these companies go down quickly if they can't respond to this type of information. This is a reality. This is the biggest new thing that's happened in procurement and grocery retail in the last few years. So, what do we got? We got discount. What's discount primarily? Discount is primarily packaged goods. The majority of packaged goods are going through discount. Yes, discount, other products go through. You're talking fresh product, goes through discount. There's no question about that. However, you're going to give up margin to get the volume. So if that's your game, God help you. Go for it. You have traditional, and these stores need a lot of help. But if you've been watching these stores the last couple of years, they've redefined themselves, all of them. They're basically mini markets. You go around the store, yes, in the middle, there's what we call the center of the store, the traditional packaged goods and that kind of thing. But around the outside, it's kind of like a little market, a bakery, a deli, a cheese area, prepared foods, and that kind of thing. And they've basically redefined themselves. So you've got, here's an example of it. So the traditional gondolas where we put packaged goods, there's less of those in those stores. You may not notice them, but I can go into a store and pick them out in a hurry. There's less of them because they need more room around the perimeter for this type of product, which gives them more margin and allows them to show a point of differentiation to their consumer. That's why they're doing it. We have a new entrant into the market. We call these stores grocerants. This is Farm Boy, the Pusateris of the world, Urban Fairs. These are grocerants. Basically, they're providing prepared meals, wonderful prepared meals, high-end, very high-end produce, meat, and that kind of thing. Absolute superb product all the way through. These are the ones that are going to locate next to somebody purveying packaged goods. And they're extremely successful, particularly in urban areas, extremely successful, because they're embraced by that baby boomer who wants a small portion, really healthy and really good, has the money, and they're embraced by the millennial who's got a few extra bucks left over from their 9% after buying their latte to take home to the family. Grocerants, big growth area. Just an example of a few of them. And then we have the outliers, the Whole Foods of the world, the Adonis, the TNT, and the Gallerias. I can't go on about these in great length, except I'll tell you this. You've probably never heard of Adonis before. Do yourself a favor and go and see the one in Mississauga. It's basically a Muslim type of store, but it's now owned, Adonis is now owned by Metro out of Montreal, because they could never replicate this. The Muslim community tends to have large families. They have large families, they have a huge sweet tooth. Go into the stores. It's worth your time to see it. I know they're certainly not in your industry, but it's worth seeing what they're doing. And Loblaws, of course, is getting into the game as well with a store called Arts, A-R-Z, as well. But it's worth seeing because they're setting a trend in certain areas. But you'll see that you have in the ethnics and the T&Ts of the world and that kind of thing a real propensity to cater to this section. Now, what's happening? Why do I put this up here? Because you're saying, well, they're just ethnic stores. They're just catering to a certain population. Well, they're not. They're not. People are going to them from across the Canadian spectrum. It's like when the Italians came to Canada in the 50s and started with pizza, we embraced it. The Japanese with the sushi, we embraced it. And we're going in and we see these stores and say, go back to our grocer and say, we like that. Take a look at your produce offering in the grocery store that you frequent most, and you will see produce, exotic produce that you never had before. And that comes from ordinary retail or ordinary consumers going into stores like these and say, it'd be swell if we had this type of thing, or this Chinese star fruit, or whatever. It's changed how we eat. And that's why it's important to understand that these stores are growing quickly and entering our market. And it's worth your while to have a look. Besides, it's a ton of fun. And then I can't leave it without saying, yes, we have big changes in the internet shopping. The biggest thing we have going in this country right now is something called click and collect. You see it down there? Loblaws are big on it. Jimmy Patterson's group is big on it out west. Basically, you order your product and you pick it up on your way home. You can do it. Walmart is doing it with lockers. Costco is doing it with lockers. I'll tell you, everybody's going to play with different mechanisms to get the product to you in a very fast way. The reason why they're going to do that and use different techniques is because the biggest factor precluding the rapid growth of online shopping is the delivery time. We've got to get it to you when you're home and available. And a 2-hour window the day after tomorrow isn't cutting it anymore. So that's what they're after. And once that's resolved, I think internet's going to take off quickly. And the industry's getting you ready for it, and has been for several years. You know, we all say, well, you won't be able to squeeze a tomato, or you won't be able to, have a grape because you can't see what it's all about. Well, go into your store again tonight on your way home and have a look at your produce section, and you'll see that for every product that's there, there's a packaged product beside it. And what the retailers are doing is they want you to buy those packaged products and get used to them. And then when you go online, you say, okay, well, that's what I want, because I know that packaged product is good. I have confidence in that packaged product. And they've been doing it for years, and very successfully replicating the incredible success that the European retailers have experienced in this particular area. So there's a lot going on in the retail sector, and I hope I've given you a little bit of an insight into some of the factors that they're weighing. But never forget what they're dealing with first and foremost. They're the front line to the consumer. Front line of the consumer, they're going to respond to the consumer. They're going to give the consumer exactly what they want. And above all, I subscribe to Doug McMillan's statement that trust and transparency will be the key to grocery retailing into the future. That is the point of differentiation, and that's what everybody selling into this sector needs to understand. Thanks very much. I would say that your sector needs to get out ahead of it. That's all I would say. Because we've seen this before. We've seen, not in this particular sector, but we've seen genetically modified, poorly handled. We've seen irradiation, poorly handled and poorly named. And so what you really need to do is get out in front of it. That's as simple as that. I hope if there's nothing else I've said today, you'll remember this, is that grocer is going to cater to that consumer. So if the consumer comes and said, this is what we want, and the mass consumer is there and that's what they want, that's where the retailer is going to go, or at least a segment of retailers are going to go that way. Believe it, that is what they will do. It's all about getting a chunk of that $110 billion pie. I don't know if that helped or not, Stuart. Yeah. Anything else? Hey, look, it's a pleasure to be here. I hope you have a great trip home. I really urge you to drop in your grocery store. Send me a note if I'm right. Don't send anything if I'm wrong. Okay? Have a great evening. Thank you.